Quote, if you knew it was in the future, you'd run into the bush screaming. September 22nd, 2002. Fleeing the darkness in Lund led us to new conclusions about our time on the West Coast. It was time to do something drastic and important, something to us that meant traveling in exotic fashion. It was time for us junior mountaineer masters to put our strength to good use. Our destination and goals are dangerous and not foolish. We entered giant Strathcona Provincial Park on the northeast end of Vancouver Island at Mount Washington Ski Resort. We have safely hiked 7 kilometers and have been watered and fed, but what a day. Here's a list of today's sorrows. We woke up at 6 a.m., but the ferry didn't leave until 7:30 a.m. 3 cars were on the ferry, all full. We missed the next ferry and had to walk across to Denman. Ferry didn't leave till 9:40 a.m. Soy milk cost $4.50, still back then. But the strawberry rhubarb and whipped cream pie was $1.50. No ride off the ferry to Courtenay. We walked up the freeway to Highway 19. Signs everywhere told us hitchhiking was illegal. Number 6, we had to walk back to Highway 19A. Time now is 10:30 a.m. Then we lit a pipe and a car pulled over. Buddy smoked a joint and took us north of Courtenay. 7, I grabbed crab apples off a tree acrobatically, and they were so terrible in the mouth I spat wildly. I put them in the ditch just so the seeds might never grow into another poison apple tree. 8, we walked a long way towards the park before we got a lift. There was an English roadster show in Derby. They were driving around everywhere. 2 old English ladies in their convertible roadsters stopped and asked us if we'd seen any roadsters. We got a ride from mountain biking women in a truck to the Wood Mountain ski hill. Number 9, no water all day. 10, we climbed Wood Mountain but stopped 200 feet at the summit. Our map didn't agree with our location. We were in the wrong place to go where we wanted to go. My pack broke when we were about to leave. Number 12, we walked down Wood Mountain. Number 13, we asked for directions from a dirt biker, and they were obviously stupid and thoroughly incorrect. 14, we walked down to these old people's A-frame. We asked them for directions. He was 85. His wife didn't speak English well. He kept pointing to the park and talking about the trails, but was giving no directions. 15, we learned that Wood Mountain was the right way to get there. The old man talked about the tower up top. He worked there in 1935. His wife told us the kids burnt the resort down, but now people just hike. 16, we got in their truck's box, and they drove us down the mountain. They had talked about the entrance to Strathcona Provincial Park at Washington Ski Resort. We thought about getting a ride home, but it was a depressing thought to pay $10 for the ferry and have accomplished nothing. Instead, the old man drove 25 kilometers to Mount Washington Ski Resort and left us at the doorstep of Strathcona Park. We offered him $10, but they said something about people helping them and their son. He told us to go to a lake he liked and how he'd been there since 1931. It was now 4 p.m. But the Mount Washington entrance to the park would cut 10 kilometers off for a hike. It was so much quicker. They said they were going to town and get us the road off of Highway 19 and said they took us all the way. We walked to our camp and we ate rice. On our off-trail adventure down past Castle Craig, I started writing this song. I'm going to climb 100 mountains. And I actually have done that. Taking my life in my own hands, I'm going to do what I like. I'm going to climb 100 mountains before the day I die. Going to hike up to the glacier and drink the magic water before the last of it is sour and the wilderness is a goner. Going to climb 100 mountains, then I'll climb 200 more. When I've climbed 300 mountains, why not try to do 4? If I've climbed 400 mountains, I can try to find 5, then do 6 and 700, 800, and hike up to 9. I wrote this at Faith Lake. Gonna find a mountain babe. We'll go on great hikes. We'll buy a sleeping bag. We can both fit inside. We can climb up to the summit. 11,000, we'll pitch tent. Sleeping bag we'll get in. Body heat's better than place for rent. When we come down the mountain, we'll be smelly and sweaty. We'll sit down at the bottom. We'll talk about our journey. There's only one kind of woman that I could ever love. One that will climb a mountain. One that never gives up. I'm gonna hide from society and do whatever I please. Gonna hang out in the trees by the lakes, seas, and streams. And when the war is coming, I will never know. I'll be gathering my wood before it starts to snow. When you're on top of the world looking down to the valleys, with a mountain girl, there's so much left to see. Gonna climb 100 mountains before it is too late. And if those mountains kill me, that'll be my chosen fate. Morning of September 24th. What a day we had yesterday. It was expected that our map would have new and useful information, but we should never assume anything. We had breakfast at a beautiful lake up on the north side of the Forbidden Plateau. We hiked around Crookshank Canyon and Moat Lake. The view into Crookshank was impressive as it dropped 1,000 feet. The plateau above it had numerous mountain peaks while the valley was out of the park. It had been logged. Waterfalls pounded in from mountain creeks. We went a little further to Moat Lake, who drains by gushing over a 12-foot waterfall. That creek winds and drops down to the Crookshank River. Moat Lake is below Castle Crag Mountain and the range running north of it. On the island in Moat Lake were a number of A-frame buildings among the rocks. The whole area around that lake reminded me of a yellow moon with green glacier water and patches of trees. A sign said that the island belonged to the Woods family for 70 years. There were boats of all kinds and an assortment of stuff in the buildings. Another sign said the trespassers will be prosecuted. But we went in anyways. Later that morning, as we were starting to climb Castle Crag, a helicopter flew over the northern mountains and landed at the island. It did this twice. When we summited that afternoon, we could see the boats were on the lake. We ate blueberries and struggled to summit. Lucas saw a bear. We were dismayed to find that around Castle Crag to Albert Edward, it just sort of ended. Rather than go all the way back, we packed through the alpine forest all the way down to Faith Lake, where we now rest to prepare to hike today in the weather yet again. The journey from Castle Crag down to Faith Lake wasn't one tourists would ever attempt. It wasn't on the park's trails. We had to lower our packs with rope down one section. We fell once or twice hard. I slipped 10 feet down spruce needles on dirt, totally in danger, but I acted naturally despite my fear. I let my body go loose until the right moment to break came up. I slid again coming to a stream bed, and then once again a number of feet down some steep rocks. My newfound Wing Chun Kung Fu seemed to come in handy. We both had to climb down slopes and scrambled exhausted. The moon was a day past full. It was very bright. The mountains here, Frink, George V, and Castle Crag made a 2,000-foot straight-up rise from the lake. The water is perfect. The sky cloudless again today. The sun warm. The beauty isolated and surreal. We came to where no one goes. Now we must find the Albert Edward Trail on the other side of the pass somewhere. We made camp today, deservedly once again. Although we did not come all that far, we went through a considerable ordeal to get where we are. I haven't risked my life so many times in a day for a long time, I'm sure. We started up and came to the pass to Faith Lake by early afternoon. When we got there, we saw we would have to go down a crazy mountain to get to the lake. It was a steep trip down. At one point, I used hanging spruce branches and roots that had drooped over a cliff to find sun as my ropes. That brush descending down that dangerous slope was so thick that I have cuts all over now. Continued on the morning of September 25th, 2022. When we got to that lake, we saw down the valley to yet another lake not on the map. We theorized that we would cross the Sir Albert Edward Trail there. We didn't. So we followed the river as it crashed and fell its way into some of the nicest open forest we'd ever seen in our lives. Mixed trees, mosses, falling river, giant rocks, big clean lake. You could drink from it, but no trail. We thought we'd camp at the lake. When we got there, a bear ran up a tree, pissed itself, and called a mummy. Now it wasn't a very good idea to stay there, it seemed. Our only option was to try to get up to the next pass before sundown, which was in about an hour and a half. To do that, we had to scale up a 500-foot cliff. But now we are close to the Forbidden Plateau again. At one point, early in the climb, my feet were slipping, and I took Lucas's hand as he pulled me to safety. I actually said, "Lucas, I'm slipping," and he went, and I might have fucking dropped right there. He kept climbing straight up, but I detoured around a bit. I could see the waterfall splashing below me. I thought about losing my hat, my life, and Lucas falling, which would be worse because I'd have to go back down to deal with it. I used my ropes near the top to get my pack up. Thankfully, when I got in a bind, Lucas showed up and took my pack and gave me a hand again. I credit Lucas with 2 half saves, equaling 1 full life save. We set up camp on the cliff just before the pass. From here we can see 10 peaks in all our close vicinity, several near the first lake we came to yesterday. We are directly 500 feet above an emerald lake and that big open forest the bear must love. There are lots of bear in this area. To the west, down the valley, we can see one big, huge snow-capped mountain. Perhaps it's the Golden Hind, the biggest on Vancouver Island. Who could have guessed that Vancouver Island had such rugged interior? It equals and may surpass the Rockies for many reasons. These mountains are side by side, closer than the Kootenay Peaks to each other, and these mountains are insanely steep, unlike any range I've seen in such an intimate way. They're solid, rocky, lightly treed in many places, and majestic. So Lucas was reading his map book and saw a write-up of the Albert Edward Trail. It is supposed to be for expert mountaineers only. And we went off the trail. We've been off trail, half lost. We knew where the plateau was. We were in expert grade terrain. That's sort of reassuring. Besides that, we were having a blast. Lucas saw 2 bear, but he lost his spoon, and I lost my fork, spoon, and persecuted t-shirt. I have no utensils, and I lost my Teen Rage band shirt. I was wearing it to remember John Bay, our ex-drummer who drowned this past year. Just before I lost it, I actually thought of him. So we hope that the pass will bring us in view of the plateau and Circlet Lake. If it is on the other side of this range, we can leave the park in the morning. It is day 4 of our journey. It's now Wednesday. Aha! Lucas went to scout the pass this morning, like how I did yesterday at Faith Lake. After 45 minutes, he returned. He found the path. We're winning. Everything was in questioning. There's no more bushwhacking now. I just realized I lost my cowboy hat yesterday. It must have happened climbing up that last cliff. Lucas went to take a look by climbing down where I'd taken my pack off. He saw nothing. We climbed up many small sections of cliff to get to the trail Lucas found. I kept thinking every time we'd bushwhack up to a solid rock wall. Oh God, not another one. But we kept finding our way through. After it was probably the 6th cliff we came up to the pass. We faced north towards towering rocky Mount Frink. To our right, it was like a steeple. All the summits in the range are like this. To the left, there was 2 more peaks going still way up. This is where we tried to go down into the valley in front of us, the Albert Edward Trail, and realize the truth. The trail went around the lake. It went nowhere near where we'd camped last night. We realized the only option left was to follow the trail over Mount Frink. It was a battle because everything was starting to hurt after a while. At 3, we summited Mount Frink. We were 1,900 meters above sea level. To the north, east, and south, we could see all the mainland coast mountains. To the west and to the south, we could see a dozen mountains, tall, snow-capped, glaciated. Below us, many lakes. Deep below, all the steep, close together. The scenery eccentric. The mountains are so steep. Railed in between a maze. We could see Vancouver, we could see Mount Baker, we could even see far to the north, Mount Waddington. We could see boats and ships out on the ocean. Standing on top of Frink, I said something to the effect, quote from the map book, expert mountaineers. Following a path was one thing, but spending 2 days trying to find your way back to the other side of a range of wild mountains to go off trail, it's insane. Let's recap a little. We climbed a big mountain, Castle Crag. Then we dropped down on the top into a steep, deep, and dangerous valley. There we found the first of the 3 perfect lakes we went to this week. We camped there and took day 3 easier by only climbing up a rocky pass and then dropping through the steepest, slickest, and thickest forest combination I could dream of. Scratches and ouches, but not a drop of blood left behind the entire journey. From the next lake, we went down through a tremendous, wonderful forest and planned to camp in it until we treed a bear cub. Then we left that 3rd lake and climbed 500 feet above it to a certain death climb. It was steeper than 7 degrees. Letting go would have meant death. Then we woke up and climbed the rest of the way to the pass through thick brush and up the stable rock ledges. From there, we climbed another mountain peak, Frink, then descended 2,700 feet below before dark to camp at Circlet Lake. Then we were back in the maintained part of the park. Trails were easier to follow, easier to make quick time now. It just feels like park down here. Tomorrow, day 5, we go to Mount Washington and hitchhike back to Hornby Island. On day 5, we rose early and hiked back to horrible humanity, loud noises, cars, economy. It's always a culture shock coming back to society. We made the best we could of it at the Early Bird Cafe in Courtney's Sleepy Hollow Inn. Last night, Lucas mentioned he saw a sign when he walked to the mall, $2.99 breakfast, so we planned on eating two. After an effortless hitchhike, we were dropped off by the owners of Mount Washington Hostel near the cafe. The polite waitress was as much as Madoc type of country person as the cook. They were very nice to us and had a great time. We each got a hungry man's breakfast. Instead of bacon and sausage, can we have extra toast and pan fries? I asked her politely to accommodate our current diets. We got 3 eggs, whole plate of pan fries, 2 fluffy pancakes, 4 pieces of sourdough bread, peanut butter, jam, 4 cups of coffee, glass of water. We ate until all of it was gone. Wow. It was like getting up to that last stretch of summit. Every step is slow and hard to follow through with, but from somewhere you find the strength to carry on. That's what eating an entire hungry man's breakfast at the Early Bird Cafe was like. We hadn't eaten much for a few days. We got there at 12:30, and we left at 2 to go to the mall and catch the Buckley Bay Ferry bus at 5:25. It was a 3-hour wait for $1.25. The bus beats taking one more agonizing step to hitchhike out of busy Courtney. We're exhausted. We're sore. We're full to the point of bloated with food. I feel like our kitten after we fed him a bottle. He would be round, bloated, and asleep. We discovered today that the mountain we had decided was Mount Frank was actually Sir Albert Edward, 2,093 meters. We climbed 3,000 feet from Circlet Lake to Albert Edward Mountain. Albert Edward is nearly the tallest mountain on the island. A bunch are taller, but no more than 300 feet. Minuscule by mountain standards, I figure. While we were on Sir Albert Edward, just over 1,000 feet from summit, we had an unexpected visitor. The once nearly extinct peregrine falcon. Less than a dozen of these birds of prey were once left because of DDT. They rebounded. We got to see one swoop down the mountain only a few feet from the ground at high speed. It moved and sped near us with precision, swooped and flew out to the valley below Albert Edward Peak into the next range west. I didn't ever think I would see a bird like that. Its amazing speed built for hunting. That was neat. It was like by us. Today we fed the Grey Jays trail mix from our hands. They would land on our fingers and grab the nuts and fly off quickly. The friendly little guys. They'll stay close to a food source. We saw a dozen quail, 2 bears. Lucas saw one near Crassocratic Summit. Grey Jays, a peregrine falcon, many paw prints, tracks, and turds. We lost 2 spoons, my favorite hat, my persecuted t-shirt. But that's the sacrifice of adventure. Sometimes you lose all your belongings. Sometimes your life. Sometimes your limbs. Most memorable to me will be the towering mountains with dozens of waterfalls with little lakes in between the hulking peaks. The view on Albert Edward Summit. I wish to see that again every day as long as I live. From there, the ocean, mainland mountains, the giants of Vancouver Island, Strathcona Parks, clear cuts outside, steep valleys, lakes, dozens of glaciers, and enormous rock ledges. I will also not forget the relief we had to be right on the trail going down to Circlet Lake. Nor will I forget the loud banging of construction machines at Mount Washington that welcome us back to Western civilization.